I was recently asked a series of questions in our Living Off Rentals Facebook group. If you're watching this and you're not currently a member of that group, you should hit pause and you should go to the link right below me and join the group. I thought these questions were awesome because they're all around finding great deals. And in this market, that's what everybody is asking about. That's what everyone's concerned about. And how do I get great deals? So thank you to the member who asked these, Michael Cornett. I really like questions like this because everybody's in a different place in their investing career. You know, I started back in 2006, I bought my first rental and I've been doing this off and on full time since then. But there's other people who are just getting started. There's people who have bought 5 rental properties, 10. Some people own thousands of rental properties. So whoever you ask these questions to, they're probably going to give you a different answer. And also the questions are going to be different based on where you're at in your career. So there's a series of questions. We're going to get into them today. I think they're great. And let's dive in. I'm Kirby Atwell from Living Off Rentals, where we believe high quality rental properties are the best investment a person can make. So let's dive into the questions. I'm just gonna read through the questions that I was asked in the group, and I'm gonna take them one by one then. So Michael asks, Kirby, would love to hear more on how quickly you respond to offers. Also, how much should you analyze before offering? What if you can't offer cash on every offer? What those conversations sound like with the sellers, and then how to get them to the closing table, and then lastly, some success stories. All right, so let's just take these one by one. So the first question is, how quickly do you respond to leads, right? So there is a saying, speed to lead, right? So it's the quicker you get to a lead, then the idea is the quicker or the more leads you're going to close, right? So I believe that's true. I think if you have the ability to get to a lead very quickly, then that is exactly what you should. Now, do I get to every lead immediately? I do not. I am a part-time investor right now. I have a full-time role as a CFO at a nonprofit, and I invest part-time. So I have structured my investing around my lifestyle. I used to have the goal of optimizing everything around my investing. So I said, hey, if I can, it doesn't matter how much I sleep at night, it doesn't matter how much time I spend with my family or my friends or anything else. All I want to do is figure out how I can get the most deals and get the biggest return. Over the years, I've realized that's not the healthiest approach. So now my focus is around creating investments around my lifestyle. So I've sold off properties in a different area that it isn't close to where I live. All my properties around where I live, they're easy to manage. They're the types of properties that I enjoy managing. And I don't need a massive volume of deals. I don't need to do 1,000 deals a year to pay the bills. You know, I just need to do maybe 1 deal a month. So my system's gonna look a little bit different than maybe a high volume wholesaler who's closing 30 deals a month. You know, there's a lot of those people out there too. So for me, what's worked really well is I've got a system that's a website, and I talk about it in this video if you want to check it out, but I've got a website and it captures all my leads for me. And so what drives traffic to that website is a Facebook ads. And so the Facebook ads drive potential sellers or motivated sellers to my website. They fill out a form, and then I get a notification on my phone when somebody's filled out that lead. So typically, if I see that notification, if I'm anywhere close to my phone and I'm able to make a call, I'm not sitting at dinner with my family, I'll call that person back in a very reasonable time, because I do want to talk to that seller as quickly as possible. Now, sometimes they'll call me, and so I've got a Grasshopper number. You can go to Grasshopper. I'll put a link also below me, and you can set up, it's just a business phone line that's connected to your cell phone. It's an app on your cell phone, and it'll ring right on your phone, just like your other, like your regular cell phone number. but you can see that it's a grasshopper number when they're calling. So you know it's a seller lead when they're calling. And so when they call, I try to answer, but if I don't, then I've got a voicemail and it just says, hey, thanks for calling Green Vet Homes. If you're interested in selling your property, leave the address, leave your name, leave your phone number, and I'll call you back as soon as possible. I get the address, I ask for the address. Typically they will leave the address. I ask for it on the phone because then I can do my research and I can look up that property. I can know everything about that property prior to calling them back. So if I get a lead, immediately I'm looking it up, I call them back, I've already got all the information. I know if it's something that I want to pursue or not by the time I even talk to them. So the answer is as quickly as you possibly can. I'm actually going to be bringing on a VA who's going to be helping me to make those calls back much quicker because I'm getting busier and busier. And so I've noticed that my response time has gone down personally. So at some point, you'll probably want to bring on an acquisitions person who can call those people back, set up the appointment for you so you can go out and meet with the seller. But initially, you just do it as quickly as you possibly can. Question number 2, how much should you analyze before making an offer? This is an excellent question. And I don't think people think about this as much as they should because you could spend all day analyzing properties that you have no ability to even purchase, or the seller is not motivated enough to even sell to you. So I made this video if you want to check it out, and this is my down and dirty analysis process. So really the key to this is just separating out the leads that are unmotivated, that are not the cream of the crop, from the ones that you really want to pursue quickly. Because if you're not doing a ton of volume, you can really set those leads up that are unmotivated or unrealistic on a drip campaign pretty easily, on an automated email just to remind them that you're still there. And then the cream of the crop email, or the cream of the crop leads, sellers, the ones that are really motivated, the ones that are realistic, that they're not going to sell their property for market value because there's all kinds of issues with it. Those are the ones you want to meet with. So in that video that I created, I talk about my down and dirty analysis process. Watch that video so that you can see how to separate between the two, and don't spend more than a few minutes on the initial analysis. You want to just really separate those out, set up the appointment with even the ones that are kind of borderline. Set the appointment with them so you can go out and meet with that seller. It doesn't take that long. Find out if they're truly motivated. But the one question that you need to get when you're on the phone, I believe some people don't do this, and some people believe you shouldn't ask this. I always ask how much the seller wants for their property. Now, sometimes they're going to be way out there, and they're just going to toss out a number, and it might ruin your motivation to even go out there and see the property, even though that wasn't a realistic number. What I've found is that it's somewhere typically in the ballpark. That's not their bottom line number, it's a starting number. But if their starting number is even close to where you need to be based on the comps and based on how they're telling you how much work needs to go into this property, they're describing the condition of the property, you can generally tell if this is a motivated seller and if they're realistic on their offer or on their purchase price that they're willing to sell it for, and it's one that you want to set up an appointment for. So that's the most important thing. So don't spend a ton of time on the initial analysis of the property. Later on, once you get it under contract, once you have time to do a thorough inspection and it's one that you can do, then you can do a really detailed analysis. You can even go back and renegotiate during your inspection period, but the initial analysis should be fairly quick. Question number 3, what if you can't offer cash on every offer or every deal? And this is another great question. This is a question that I get quite a bit from newer investors because I think there's a misconception when you first start off. It's kind of intimidating that you're going to go out and write offers on potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property when you look at your bank account and you're like, you might have $1,000 or $5,000 in your bank account, but you're making a $100,000 offer. You're like, how am I going to get this money before closing? I don't have this money. How can I make these cash offers? There's about 1,000 different creative financing techniques that you can come up with. There's an endless supply of YouTube videos out there on creative financing strategies. And you don't have to come up with cash. You can do all these different creative financing strategies that are out there. But I will tell you that right now there is a glut of cash in the marketplace. If you have a great deal, if you're making an offer on a property that's well below market value, and there's potential for an extremely high ARV after you're done with the rehab of this property, and it's a great deal, there is more than enough money that will be there. You can call me if you can't find any other money. If it's a great deal, I will fund that deal, because there's a shortage of deals compared to money. There's a ton of money that would love to get double-digit returns, which you can get on a property that's going to be rehabbed. It's realistic for a lender to ask that on a short-term loan on a rehab property that's going to be refinanced into a rental property long-term. So there's tons of money out there. So don't worry about not having cash when you make these offers. Now, secondarily, you can come up with all these creative financing techniques, but the people that I see that really do well in this business and really excel over the long term are the ones that come up with a couple other strategies for offloading the deals and monetizing the deals that they themselves can't do. So if you're a rental property buyer and you say, okay, I can only go out and I can only do 1 or 2 deals at a time, and I only have enough cash for 1 or 2 deals at a time, but you come across more potential deals than that, a lot more leads than that, then set up a relationship, figure out 1 or 2 different strategies for monetizing these leads that you're not going to close on. So set up a relationship with another flipper who's taking these deals, maybe partner with a wholesaler who will market these deals that you can't do, or set up a relationship with an agent, a real estate agent, who can list these properties for the owners. If it might be a deal that just doesn't have enough skin on the bone or doesn't have enough meat on the bone to make it a deal for you, but a realtor could sell that to a homeowner, and it's a great deal for a homeowner. So try to think a little bit creatively, but also have the confidence to know that the money will be there if it's a great deal. Question number 4 and question number 5, I'm gonna combine together and take those on at the same time because they both kind of relate to each other. So what do those conversations sound like with the seller? And then how do you get the seller to the closing table? So again, I have a previous video, it's one of my first YouTube videos you can watch right here. And this video is around how to talk to sellers. So I think that would be a very beneficial video to watch. It's around this topic, but there's 2 main things. And in all these conversations, they're gonna go very similarly. They're gonna follow a similar script. And also, if you want to download that script, you can go, there's a link right below me. You can download the script that I use when I talk to sellers. I've kind of got it memorized now, but initially you can go through it and you can actually read it as you're talking to a seller, and all the conversations are going to follow a similar script. But there's 2 main things that I want to find out when I'm talking to a seller. Number 1 is motivation, and number 2 is price. So motivation, how do you find out if a seller is motivated? You're not going to ask them, are you a motivated seller? They're probably not going to say, yeah, I'm super motivated. I want to sell it way below my, way below market price. So how do you find out motivation? You ask them other questions like, tell me about your situation. Like, why are you selling the property? What are you going to do with the money once you sell the property? How quickly do you want to close on the property? Do you have the property listed with a realtor? So all these questions are going to get back to, if they start answering, I need to sell right away. I want to close next week. I just inherited this property. I need the cash right away. I live out of state. The taxes are killing me. All this stuff, that they're extremely motivated. But if they say, I just started thinking about it, I might want to sell 6 months from now. I'm talking to 6 other realtors and they're going to give me their, appraisals of the property. They're probably not super motivated. They just want top dollar. So figure out the motivation level so you don't spend too much time with unmotivated sellers. And then secondly, you want to know what they want for the property, right? Because you don't want to go to a property that you should be buying for $100,000, and in the seller's mind, he thinks he's going to sell it to you for $250,000. And you spend all day walking through his property, building rapport, becoming best friends with this guy, just to find out that he's not going to be able to sell you his property because he wants $150,000 more than what you can pay for this property. So you need to find out the ballpark. And so typically if somebody doesn't want to tell you, or everyone's thought about what they think the property could sell for. I promise you everyone's thought through it. Some people are just reluctant because they don't know if the number they have in their mind is realistic. So a lot of times you're going to ask them and they say, well, you tell me what you'd offer. And you can do that, but then you're going to run around all day trying to figure out, how much you should offer, and then you find out that it was way unrealistic to begin with. It wasn't even in the same ballpark. So if they say, you tell me your price, then say, I understand that, but I don't want to waste your time, right? So is there a ballpark that you're in? So, from this price to this price is what you would like for the property. So then they might say, well, somewhere between 100 and 120,000 I'd like for this property. Then that's kind of the ballpark. Probably they would take a little bit less than that, but that's the starting place. If they still won't give you a ballpark, they say, no, you give me an offer, then I always follow up with the third question, and that is there a number that you wouldn't take for this property? So a lot of times then they say, well, yeah, I wouldn't take $100,000 for this property. It's worth way more than that. So if your offer's got to be at $80,000, then it's kind of a lost cause, and you put them on a follow-up campaign, and you don't spend a ton of time analyzing that property. So that's what I'm always after. I'm after the motivation first and then the price, but the general conversation is always going to follow a very similar script. And the final question is there an example of a success story or a time that this went right? And so I can share my most recent deal and how the details of that deal played out. And like I mentioned, the way I have my marketing set up, it's set up on automated Facebook ads that go out and they target motivated sellers in my radius, in the area that I want to buy. And so the way this deal worked out is my wife and I were sitting on the couch in the evening, we were watching TV, and I got a Facebook message from somebody that saw one of my ads, and it was the niece of the owner of a property, and it was an aging owner of a property. The property was in very bad disrepair. It had some health issues, health department issues going on in the house. It was just, the person needed to move out of this house. They could no longer care for the house, and it was falling apart, and they were getting sick as a result of the condition of this property. And so this woman reached out to me, and she sent me a message and said, hey, I see that you're a buyer. I saw your ad. Are you interested in this property? And she gave me the address of the property, and I looked it up right there because I just Googled it on my phone and saw it was the perfect area for what I'm doing. It was a perfect Airbnb type property, and it was kind of the ideal street. And so I said, yeah, I said, absolutely. I said, I can meet you there tomorrow morning. And so we set up the appointment, and I met her out there the next morning, I met her uncle out there, the guy who owned the property, the next morning. And I just did a walk through the property, and at the end I said, what do you want for the property? I typically, like I said in the last point, I always try to ask what they want in advance, but if they're really motivated and I can see the condition of this property is really bad and it sounds like a situation where they're going to be motivated to sell quickly, I'll still go out to that property without asking the price. And so did all the walkthrough, built some rapport with the seller, and said, what are you looking for the property? They wanted $90,000 for the property. And I said, I can't get up to $90,000. I know that, but let me do some research and see what I can do. And so I did some research. I figured out that I could go up to, about $75,000. And so I offered $72,000 for the property. And this was the same day. This was that afternoon. I came back to him, and I was talking to the niece of the owner, and I said, I can offer $72,000 for your property. I know your uncle said he wanted $90,000, but here's all of the issues with the property. Here's what's going to cost me a lot of money, because it's a huge rehab. It is costing a lot of money. And so she came back and she said, let me talk to my uncle. She came back that evening and said, can you do 75? And that was really kind of where I needed to be, in that $72,000 to $75,000 ballpark. It's an absolutely great deal. And so I said, sure, 75,000. And so I DocuSigned over the contract right then. And if you don't have DocuSign, it's a cheap way to send for electronic signatures. I just sent it to her via email. She clicked on it, got it signed, sent it back, and we had a deal. And then 30 days later, it wasn't even 30, it was like 2 weeks later, they wanted to close pretty quickly. 2 weeks later, we closed on the property. So that's how the deal went. You know, it was through a Facebook message. We negotiated, we still talk through Facebook Messenger. You know, she'll drive by sometimes and say, oh, I like what you did with the place. I like the color you're painting it, you know, and so we're still chatting that way. But a lot of times it's either a call or they just fill out the form and I call them back right away. But that's the typical, you just talk to people like they're people. You know, that's my approach. It typically works. I don't do a high volume where I've got people constantly on the phone, you know, robo-dialing to sellers. You know, that's a different business model. But you got to figure out what your business model is, and that's I guess a success story. Yes, for a success story. That was my most recent deal. I hope you got a lot out of this video. Again, this is just one schmuck's opinion. Different people are gonna have different answers based on where they're at in their journey, and different people are gonna have different questions based on how many properties they've bought and where they're at in their journey as well. So the questions are gonna be different, the answers are gonna be different, but hopefully this resonated with many people who are listening to this and you got something out of it. So if you did get something out of it, definitely comment below. Tell me what you got out of it. Tell me if it sparked another question for you, because I love these questions. Ask them in the Facebook group, ask them in the comments below, because I'll make other videos like I did for Michael in this video, and I love to answer these questions. Give this video a like, give it the thumbs up, subscribe, because I come out with videos like this on a weekly basis. I also chop up the podcast interviews into the highlights, and I release those as videos throughout the week as well. You can check out the podcast on any podcast player. It's just the Living Off Rentals podcast. I hope to see you in the Facebook group, but if not, I will see you in the next video.